My argument would be that I think the data actually doesn't lie. I think you absolutely can reverse engineer what is actually going on there. The problem is a lot of times we think it's a fluke.
You've heard me say it before. Never start with your product. Don't start with your process. For God's sake, don't start with your story because no one cares. Start with the problem. That's what they care about. Today, Jessica and Miller and I, we unpack why the problem, that's the hook. Your ideal customers, they're not walking around wondering about your methodology, your credentials, your clever framework, or your backstory. They're scanning the world for someone who understands the pain they're already feeling and someone that can help them solve it. And when you describe their problem better than they can, you instantly build trust. You become the expert. Jessica is a profitability expert and growth consultant. She helps business owners find the money that's already hiding inside their business, not by adding more offers, more ads, or more activities, but by identifying the real constraint and fixing that leak. Now, for coaches, consultants, category designers, professional services, this all critical. You see, podcast interview marketing works best when you don't just share information, you diagnose. You help that listener see the problem clearly and then see the next steps even clearer. Listen closely, because this conversation may help you stop chasing and start converting. Jessica, I am so excited to talk with you. We both believe that we should start with the problem. Can you unpack that a little bit? We had talked about this online, and we really want to unpack why the problem is the key to start.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm so happy to be here. In the name of Don Miller, who I have been following for a long time, many people have heard StoryBrand. He always would say to me, during our coaching sessions that I teach in his community, he would always beat this idea into my head that the problem is the hook. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Why is that? And I started to understand that human nature, humans and individuals, they are scanning their environment for problems. Their brain and they care about what problems they have, what problems are in their existing proximity, and how they're going to overcome those. So when they come into contact with you or your brand, one of the first things that they think are what can you do for me? What problem are you going to help me solve? In the Rolodex of our brain, there's a problem and you're sitting right next to it if you've done your job well and you can connect your business or your brand to the thing that they care about, which is this problem. Most people don't think about the problem first. They think about themselves, they think about what they sell, they think about their business. And not to burst anybody's bubble, but the truth is nobody cares until they know that you can solve their problem, and then they care how you do it.
It's interesting. You said it's the hook. And as you were saying that, I'm like, the noise signal type thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're only listening for our problem because, like you said, it's all about me. We all look at the world as I'm the main character and everybody else is the supporting role, right? And so if they're just talking about our problem, then that fits into the way we're seeing the world at that time. Everything else is just noise. So the hook, the signal, whatever you want to call that, that's what people are listening for.
Correct. Yes. And the work that I do, I'm a growth consultant. I help people on profitability, and I'm a profitability expert. And one of the biggest issues I see is this idea of not leading with the problem on the front end of your business. But a lot of us go in and they talk to customers about what do you need help with or what's going on in the back end of your business. And at the end of the day, those people also care about what they think the problem is in their business. And to the extent that you can get clear on that for them and then isolate it within their business and focus your energies and efforts there, the easier that you will convert that client, the bigger impact you will have on the results, and the easier it will be for them to grow because their number one problem or the number one issue in their business from a weighted perspective is affecting a huge amount of the output and the results. And yet we spend a lot of time focusing on all the things circling around all the stuff and all the problems that are not really the problem. But the problem that is the hook that they care about and they see is really the thing that is going to create the biggest impact and results in their business. And also, the profitability goes way up when they can do that thing better than they did before. And that is really like the problem is always the epicenter of the universe. It always is.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit because a lot of times people come in and they don't know what problem they have. They know what
Yes.
pain they have, but
Hmm.
that's not the same thing as the root cause of the problem. So,
Yes.
how do you go through and help them educate them on what the bigger issue, what the core problem is? Because if you can do that, then you become really the expert, not just the vendor that says, what do you want me to do?
Yes, that's a great question. I think the first piece is what you and I have talked about, Tom, which is like knowing and believing that no one cares about anything else that comes out of your mouth until they believe and understand that you understand what their problem is, that you are identifying what that is for them or you're recognizing it. So when I'm walking around as a consumer and I have a problem, that's the thing I care about. I don't care about anything else, and I care about you a lot more. If you can say, I see you, I get you, and I understand that problem that you have, and let me help you understand why that's happening. And when you, as the business owner or the person I'm talking to, can explain to me that problem better than I ever could say it myself, I immediately think you're a genius. There is so much trust and thought leadership that's created in that moment that it like catapults our relationship forward on the trust scale. So now I'm really interested. I'm like, okay, yep, that is exactly what's happening. What do you do about that? Like, tell me more. And that part moves that whole conversation forward. Now we're interested, we're invested, and now we want to hear about like what you think about that, how you solve that problem, what you're seeing. All of those things come after this feeling that we understand each other and we know each other. This is also true on the back end of people's businesses. Somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm making $3 million, but I've plateaued and I've never worked harder for my money. I'm finally making the money I want to make, but it's never been harder than ever. I'm like, that's really interesting. You know, let's talk about like what's going on there. And so we start to like dig into by asking a lot of questions and understanding that. And then once we can get to the heart of it, not all the symptoms, not the 45 things. We're looking for like the linchpin. When we can find that and explain it to someone and help them see it, the same kind of thing happens. They look at us and they're like, wow, you get it. I get that. I see it. I understand how that's creating all the pain in my life. We instantly have a connection there. So it's hyper customized to them, to what's
So,
going on.
it sounds like it's also diagnosing because let's
Yes.
use you as an example there. There's so many people that go out there and say, I need more leads. I need more website traffic,
Yes.
whatever it is. I need more Facebook likes. But you say, no, it's a profitability thing. So how do you go from the problem they think they have to the problem you know they have because you've seen it so many times?
Yeah, it's through a lot of questions. We're super curious. We want to know what's going on in your world. And we come from the place that growth is really about subtraction and it's about doing less things better. So in many businesses, there's a million work streams. We're doing a lot of stuff. And there is a couple of issues that are really important. Number one is people don't really know where their money's coming from. They don't know what's really driving the bus. So it's difficult for them to then fix the problem because they're not exactly sure what's happening. And the knee jerk reaction is, I'm going to add more stuff to fix this. But I'm always here to tell people, like, if you have a broken funnel or an offer that doesn't work, like adding more offers to overcome a broken offer is not going to solve your broken offer problem. It's just going to make your life really complicated and frankly, probably cost you a ton of money and heartache. But in that vein of we need more people, people think it's a traffic problem. So they think I need to add more people and more things. I'm going to solve all my problems. But in our world, what we see is that you've spent the time, you spent the money, you've built the business on the back end. We want to know, where are you leaking profits? Where are you leaking the money? So we come in and we ask you a lot of questions. We ask you, what's going on there? Tell us about this. Have you thought about that? What do your clients do? We're trying to uncover, like, where exactly is the problem? What's the biggest issue? And so once we do that, and in fairness, when we're talking to people like this, just meeting them, and we're not really in the data, we're making our best assumption. We're asking questions based on what they think. But because we've done this so many times, we're really good at it. So we can uncover where that treasure map is sort of leading us. And then by asking them, have you thought about this or have you done that? We think it's this thing. Tell us about this stuff. They start to put those pieces together on their own. They're like, "Oh, no, actually, I haven't done that. But that's really interesting." And we're like, "Cool, that's no problem. What about this thing?" And they're like, "Actually, no, we haven't done that either." And so we're circling around it. And then once we really focus in on that, we quantify it. Like, if this is a $3 million business and they are running their core offer and it's making them, I'm making this up, $1 million a year, and they're leaking people on the sales call, for example, they're falling out of the funnel. We're like, if we plug this leak, what would that look like for you overall? And we can do the math with them and people can see what that looks like. It's not ambiguous. And very quickly, people move through this place of doing the math. Like, do you want to spend $50,000 in Facebook ads over here to get 25, more people come in? Or do you want to plug this hole so that instead of having 20 people on a sales call with a conversion rate of 10, you have 30 with a conversion rate of, 50% of that, 5 times whatever. It's very clear.
I see it sometimes as being a professional or being an expert. It's almost like being a physician. As you
It
were
is.
explaining it there, it's like you don't go into a physician or a surgeon's office and say, I can do these 100 surgeries, right? Which one do you like, right? Which one, I'm running a special on this one this week, right? All
Right.
of that. No, you start to ask that questions, and sometimes you can walk in and they can tell from the symptoms this is what you're going to have, but
Yes.
you've got to focus on the questions, the problems, so they can come to see this is the core problem, this is the solution. So you're not trying um to sell them a solution or a surgery. They're saying, oh yeah, I see the problem, this is the obvious way to do it. And then they're making the decision on that. And I think it's a different view of being a professional
Hmm.
that understands the problem better than they do, has seen it more times than they ever do, as opposed to just being a vendor that says, well, what do you want me to do?
Yes. And the other important point that you just touched on, Tom, is when we talk to people, we ask them what they want. So if this is a $3 million business that would like to generate $200,000 in the next 6 months, that's what they care about. And we're figuring out for them the easiest, most cost effective, fastest way for them to create that result. And to your point, a lot of them will be like, if I just had 1,000 more people, I just need 1,000 more people. And we're like, actually, that would get you this money, but this is the investment for that. And it would be so much harder for you to convert 1,000 cold leads than for you to plug this hole right here and get the answer to that problem solved in less time with less money and less friction. Um, what do you want to do? Like, that's really where we're coming from. And we watch people light up around this because it's kind of it like bends people's brains a little bit, I think. They're not thinking like that. They're thinking they need more. They're missing something. They broke something. It's all about like what they didn't do. I'm like, no, you're doing all the things actually, especially when you're a business that's very successful like that. But
And
this is like, how do you do it better and
but I would say
easier?
it just bends the people's mind that resonate with it, right?
Yes.
Eddie Yoon from wrote the great book Super Consumers,
Hmm.
right? The vast majority of the world doesn't care about you, your product, your service, anything. You can't help the vast majority of the people. You just want to go to those super consumers that understand it, resonate with it, will get the most value out of it, and then tell everyone else about it. And that's the
Yes.
other thing is, this idea of the megaphone, right? I just need
Yes.
more. I need to make more noise. I need to
Mhm.
get more, more, more. I reject that, right? That idea of a
Mm.
magnet. How can I attract the right people and repel the wrong ones?
Mhm.
Some people will just see it as noise, other ones will see it as signal.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, and I wanna also just touch on that too, which is this. I am all for amplification, but everything is not created equal in your business. So when you do this work, when you figure out what's really moving the needle, when you optimize that for the outputs that you want and the results, and then you amplify it, that is the killer combination. So when we figure out that this is where you're leaking money and this is your most powerful place to be profitable in your business, the money is hiding there right now. You're doing all these things, but here's where it's inefficient and it's not optimized. And we fix it so that the output of that is 50% higher than what you were doing before. And then we run the Facebook ads. Now it's a love fest. You know what I mean? Like that's the order we want to do it. But if you've got a huge hole in the boat, and you just like keep putting on more oars, it's not going to like that's super inefficient. Like, yes, you will move, but it's not going to be the same as if you plug the hole and then you get people rowing. Now we're cruising. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
So
that idea
that's
of
the important part.
that the incremental better, right?
Yes,
We can
that's
get
right.
more efficient at things that are less effective, right? And
Mhm.
that's not going to work long term.
Mm-mm.
Or you can figure out what's that exponential thing that you can do. What's that lever that you can move to to get the better um to get the better conversions, to get the
Yes.
better ultimately profits and value for everyone. And
Yes.
that's the difference between, just activity or results with that.
Yes. And I have found that there are that idea of levers. We talk about profit levers, but there are some really powerful levers that are super simple and they're very specific in people's business that amplify that result. And that is things like if you create more value per purchase of customer. So if you increase order volume, now somebody instead of buying $100, it's spending $100, they're spending $300. You can triple your business by doing nothing else, not having another new person walk through the door, just by tweaking that type of thing. Again, already in your business, where are you giving them value? Where can you have them buy more of the things that they want to buy with you? With still an N of one customer. I went from 100 to 300 and I'm still only servicing one person. That is huge, right? Bundling things, or repeating purchases. Like, you love me, you bought my $100 thing, you usually buy it once a year. Well, what if we like tweak this or got in front of you more often because you already love us and you're already buying the thing? And we keep solving your problem over and over because we know exactly what that problem is. And now you're buying this thing once every quarter. Well, one person, $100 just became $400. 4x your business, still one person. So those things of like what we were talking about, it's like knowing the person, knowing the problem, and understanding how to increase the value by keeping the inputs constant, but mining the stuff on the back end by really doing and servicing this person better in a more optimal way and leveraging that person.
Do you start with what the constraint is, what you're optimizing for, and work back?
Hmm.
Because I see so many people, they'll look at the funnel and I need more in the top to get more in the
Yes.
bottom.
Mm.
It's like, well, why don't you start with the bottom and make it a sales cylinder instead of a leaky funnel? How do you
Yes.
think about that when you're designing the problem or the solution for that?
Yeah, we always start with the end in mind, always. So, what is it this person is experiencing and what do they want? Like, where are you and where do you want to be? That delta is what we're actually optimizing for. And then we're going to go in and we're going to find out like, what you're doing and how we can do it better. Because the thing that people forget is they're successful and they're doing something that is working. And we want you to do that thing better. And more than likely, actually 100% of the time, there's always a way you can do it better. The problem is we kind of don't look at that and kind of trash that idea. And then we're just focusing on the cold traffic on the front end. And again, traffic is great and demand is great, but it is harder to get people who don't know you've never heard of you. And now you're going to try to convince them, why should they even listen to you? Never mind, buy. versus getting the people that are inside and the things that are working in your business to convert. So we are looking at that part of it. And then we're optimizing what you have for the goal and that delta that we uncover. And that's very much driven by the business owner. Like, again, this is the thing they care about. This is the ultimate result that they want. Um, to give you an example of how this works, I had a brick and mortar client who runs a med spa who was making millions of dollars, but it was like grinding, and she could see her expenses are going up. She's adding all these things. She's got a menu of products, like walk in here. What do you want to do? Here's 50 options. I mean, I laugh, but we do this a lot, right? We think more offers are better. More things are going to move the needle. What we found when we looked at her business and her opportunity for growth is that she was running events that were bringing in the most people to her business. And when we looked at these events and how they were converting, they were bringing people in, but making they weren't making enough money from a conversion perspective on the back end. So we diagnosed that. We're like, hey, if this is the lever that's working, how do we 10x like this result with this particular asset? And so we optimized the event. On the back end, we got really clear, like, who is this person? What is their problem? Why are they coming to this event? And what thing are we going to give them to solve that problem once they understand that we know exactly who they are and the problem that they have? So what we did was we created a package and key to the problem that that client had when they walked in the door. That solution was a package that, instead of being like a $200 facial, was a package that was $2,700. So the people came in, we were problem aware. We invited them. We talked about, this is your problem. Here's the solution. You want to solve this problem right now? Buy this thing. And then we'll go off, skip into the sunset. Everybody is really happy. She went from making, I don't know, a couple $1,000s for an event to making almost $45,000 in an afternoon. In an afternoon, 10 to 3. And I remember like reworking this. Are we making sure we're seeing the numbers? But when you have 10 people that are buying something at $200, because we know the asset is converting like that, but then you have 10 people that are buying $2,700 or 15 people that are buying that, the results are massive. And it really came from understanding this was her best opportunity. This is the person's problem we're dealing with, and this is how we're going to solve it. And we're marrying those together.
As I hear that, it's like doubling down on what's working,
Yes,
right? Because there's a
exactly.
million things that could have been done. Well, why don't we do geo-targeting,
Yes,
Facebook ads, all
that's
the
right.
rest of that? Because
Mhm.
that would bring in so much. But
Yep.
no, figure out what's working. And I can think of one of the clients we worked with was doing occasional podcast interviews and got the vast majority of his leads from ads. And as he was looking to scale up the business, he had to step back and said, well, I do a podcast interview and, it gets me a client. It takes me an hour, but I spend all this money on Facebook ads and I do 20 discovery calls and I get a client. And
Mhm.
the ad people were telling him, double down on that, hire 2 sales development reps to do all that,
Double your
to
ad spend.
the spend, and his costs were going up. His risk was going up because now he had all of these real costs with that. And he's like, it seems like a lot of activity to get a little bit out of the bottom of the funnel there. He's like, I'd rather just double down on what's working.
Mhm.
And people will say, well, it's not scalable. For him, it worked. Right? He was able that same way with the live events. Is that scalable? Maybe not for Amazon,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But for what she was doing there at that med spa, what for this client was doing to get us consulting clients in, boy,
Yes.
that was very, very effective.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about this too, and this is true for your client too, Tom, is that the actual like funnel in this example, the event funnel, that becomes an asset in and of itself. You can actually now take this thing that, if I construct it this way and we talk about these things and we put all the pieces together, it actually delivers in this capacity. It results in this kind of income and these conversions. So guess what she's done? She not only made $45,000 in that event, but we took the same framework. It's an event framework. And now she runs it for her Mother's Day event, her 4th of July event, her holiday event. And so every time she turns this asset on, she makes this money in a very predictable way. And that is true, right, of a podcast guesting funnel too. Like if you're doing all these episodes and no one's converting, you can look at that in isolation and then fix it and optimize it. Or to your point, it is working. And now you're like, okay, what exactly are you doing? Let's optimize that and then repeat it. And it's awesome and it's
That's a
easy.
great example there. It's like optimize it to make sure you're getting results because
Yes,
I've heard so many people, I need to be on bigger interviews. I need to do
that's
more
right.
interviews. And
Mm-mm.
it's like, well, if it's not converting, multiplying it, doubling down, and the neighbor used to call it doubling down on stupid or doubling down on a losing hand. Why would you want to do that? So figure out what is missing in there to get those conversions because at the end of the day, you know, as you say, the problem is on the profit side, not on the activity side.
That's right. And I think this idea of, you know, where do you get the highest ROI for your time, your energy, and your money? You need to go there. Like you've done the hard work. It's not about working harder. It's about doubling down on what's working and understanding that data, which does not have to be complicated. I'm not talking about a Google dashboard. I'm talking about like a basic, conversion map for your funnel, and then going there and fixing it. And doing that is easier. It is faster. It is much more profitable, and it gets more profitable over time because you learn to do this thing now even better and more efficiently. So that like exponentially grows. And then you can apply it to all of these other places in your business. And that's when it gets really good because when you think about like what you're doing guesting on a podcast or what you're talking about, guess what? That stuff really translates when you're standing in a room full of people. Or if Oprah called you up, it also translates to her. You know what I mean? So that that piece of like the money is hiding there for you in a very specific place. You just need to learn how to mine it, but you can grow faster and easier if you double down on that.
How about you had mentioned numbers, right? And you're a numbers person. I'm an engineer at heart, right? And sometimes I think, the numbers can lie, but there's
Mm,
that underarching feeling there, right? And not everything is 100% um, attribution on
mhm.
there, right? Not every number is perfect, but I remember one client that came to us and he said, I've never understood all those Google Analytics reports or the Facebook printouts, but he's like, I know that when I do this, I get clients, right? When I talk with the right people, and that could be from a stage, it could be from a digital stage, whatever it is, he just knew that that's his lever to get business. What's your
Yes.
sense on that about numbers versus that gut feel of knowing your business?
Yeah. I mean, the killer combination is when this comes together, like intuition and the feeling, both from the perspective of like, I think this is working. Also with, I love doing this and I'm like charged up energetically and I want to like be going over there. Like all those intuitive feelings are important. Um, my argument would be that I think the data actually doesn't lie. I think you absolutely can reverse engineer what is actually going on there. The problem is a lot of times we think it's a fluke. Like I had a client once who was like, I don't know, Jess. I just, I go on vacation and like 3 people sign up for my program and I don't, it's just like, it's a fluke. I was sitting, on the whatever at the cabana and then they just sign up. I mean, what the heck? And I remember saying to her, no, it's not a fluke. Like, let's actually look at this. And what it was what these people signed up from LinkedIn. And what was she posting on LinkedIn from vacation? She was posting a certain type of content that was communicating to her client clearly the result they wanted. And it was touching on the problem that they were experiencing and how to solve that. And that was the thing that was converting people. But I think a lot of times we're not looking to reverse engineer that. We don't think in that capacity. So we lean a lot of times on the feeling part. And I think the feeling part is very important. But I promise you the data is there and it can be super easy. It's like I posted this thing. Well, did how many people saw it? Did they like take the action you wanted from the link in your LinkedIn post to book the call? Yes, this many people did that. Okay, what's that conversion? And then you mine all of that information that points back to the thing that's working.
So
And yeah.
the problem really becomes you get success.
Hmm.
How do you recreate that
That's right.
success in the most easy way? It's not pulling all the levers, but what one lever will cause that success to happen again.
That's right. And the operative thing here is one at a time. We want to do one thing really, really well because quality matters. We also want to be able to hear the signal. Like if you change your website and do this thing and do that thing, you have no idea what actually is causing the result. You know, as an engineer, it's super messy, right? Super messy. And it's a huge lift. Let me like rewrite my website. Let me, do the landing page. Let me do the whatever, come up with a new slide deck. People get overwhelmed. But if we're like, look, we think the problem is here. We've seen the data. Like, let's fix this one problem, test it, and optimize. You're better off. And it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. Yeah.
Jessica, what is ordinary to you is amazing to others. Thanks for sharing your insights here. How can people get in touch with you? What's the next step for 'em?
Yeah. So they can find me on my website. I'm at jessicamillercoaching.com. I'm on LinkedIn, same name. And I have a podcast called the It's Your Offer podcast where we like talk about profitability and growth all day long. So that's another place that people can find information.
Excellent. Definitely check Jessica Miller out. Great podcast, great insights, and thank you for sharing them with us today.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
What I appreciate about Jessica's message is how practical it is. Growth is often about subtraction, doing fewer things better, finding what's already working, then optimizing it and amplifying it. Too many businesses think they need more traffic, more leads, more offers, more interviews. But if the offer's broken, if the funnel's leaking, or the message doesn't connect with the listener's real problem, more activity, well, it only multiplies waste. Now, that applies directly to podcast interview marketing. The goal is not to be on every show. The goal is to be on the right shows, to speak to your super consumers and help them recognize the problem that you have and that you are uniquely positioned to solve. So here's your action step from this episode. Before your next podcast interview, write down the one problem, that problem your ideal customer is already thinking about. Then ask yourself, can I explain this problem so clearly that they feel seen, understood, and ready for the next step? Because when you start with the problem, you stop sounding like a vendor and you start showing up as the expert they are looking for.